Mr. Russell T Davies. Now, what's the best episode you've ever written? Hello guys, welcome back to New Who HQ. I am Matt, and today I am ranking the top 10 best episodes written by Russell T Davies. Yes, if you do like and enjoy this video, then I will do the same for Stephen Moffat, and if you really want me to, I'll do Chris Chibnall as well. I will be including the 60th specials in this ranking as well. Number 10. Love and Monsters. Yeah, I imagine everyone's probably going to hate me for this. I really like Love and Monsters. I did a rewatch of this episode today, the day of filming, and I tell you what, it's an episode that I did used to hate, but never as much as people put hate on it. I watched it again a few months ago and I was like, okay, actually I do quite like this. I've watched it again and I think this really shows Russell's his sort of type of trying to be different with Doctor Who and his writing and trying to stand out. And this episode stands out. I'm not saying it's perfect. Okay, Peter Kay as the villain, the Azorbeloff from planet Clom. Okay, that is a little bit silly, but I'll tell you what, this is just classic Doctor Who here, this classic cheesy feeling with a reasonable serious threat. But I love the whole, everyone meeting up and trying to find the Doctor, and this whole mystery of who the Doctor is to them. And yeah, I really, really like that. Okay, let's move up then to number 9, and that is Tooth and Claw. This is an episode that doesn't really get much attention like with Love and Monsters. It's an episode that's kind of just sits there at the beginning of series 2 and no one says that much about it. I also rewatched this one. I mean, I rewatched Russell all his episodes recently. It's not like I only rewatched the ones that I put in my list. And this one for me, beginning, with torture and the torture references, the wolf, the CGI is a little bit poor, but yeah, again, I love how that brings so much fear to the episodes. A lot riding on several things happening here. An episode that is underrated. Okay, let's move on to number 8. Wild Blue Yonder. Yeah, sorry if just the picture looks different. My battery ran out. I've lost the other one. So basically it's been like 2 hours since I've had to wait to be able to talk about number 8. Yeah, so that's probably why it's now dark, so a bit less light. It might be coming in a few more shadows. Sorry about that. But number 8, Wild Blue Yonder. Yes. As we know, back in this sort of era of Doctor Who, for an episode to sneak in, it has to be pretty good. And I feel like for Wild Blue Yonder, some people may think it's a little bit low. It's just up against other things which for me feel more iconic to me. They mean a lot more to me than this at the moment. So yeah, this for me is a classic Doctor and Donna story, obviously set back in 2023, and it's a very eerie, it's a very, I wouldn't, there's scary parts to it, but it's more like a thriller, eerie, no one really knows what's going on, a bit like Midnight vibes, as I've said before. So yeah, this episode is one that I feel like people will look back on in a few years, probably including me, and go, actually, this was pretty good. Okay, moving then to number 7 and back into the early 2000s times now, and that is The Water of Mars. This episode sort of has a little bit like the Wild Blue Yonder. I feel like this is more of a threat than Wild Blue Yonder, and they're two very, very different, I get that, but with this, you know that there are people being turned into water zombies, the flood, and they are trying to kill you. They, everybody already knows that everyone dies on this base 2059. And Phil Ford, I should also shout out that this was co-written alongside Phil Ford's. Russell didn't do all of the work here, but just the ending doesn't disappoint, where basically most people die. It's a very emotional roller coaster. The Time Lord Victorious is in full swing here, like what Russell's created, and obviously with Tennant getting a little bit too big for his boots, because he's lost everything. We sort of see his character development coming up strong here because we sort of sense the journeys that he's been on, and Russell writes that really, really well. So yeah, really like this episode. Number 6, the first one on the list from the quite early of the 2000s, Bad Wolf and Parting of the Ways, which is the finale to Series 1 with Christopher Eccleston. Yeah, I mean, obviously people watching it back then didn't know Russell massively as a writer, and this was his first sort of finale, and we all know what Russell is like with finales. When he wrote all of his finales, and this one for me probably felt like the lowest one in terms of what happened, but for a Series 1, for a small budget, and for, quite a lot of build-up, but also problems with Chris Eccleston leaving, so you know that may have shaped the way the finale went. He still did it pretty well. The whole Bad Wolf situation, that was really interesting. Captain Jack, you know, with him becoming immortal, and the whole thing with Rose, almost like digesting the TARDIS, the vortex, the time vortex. Russell can be quite good at writing an array of emotions. That's what he is like as a writer. I feel like in a lot of his finales especially, we do get that quite well. Okay, move on to number 5. The Giggle, yes, the final of the 3 specials with David Tennant and Catherine Tate. This was Russell T Davies in a playroom. Him casting Neil Patrick Harris, him writing Ncuti Gatwa for the first time, him into, you know, the way he wrote Tennant and Ncuti, so they both felt like they were on the stage together, but also this was Ncuti's time to give him that little bit, maybe a bit more spotlight than Tennant, but also not disappointing the nostalgic fans of Tennant still being involved in that sort of interaction. That's not easy for a new writer to do, you know, the first new Doctor's words, and that's what Russell does pretty well alongside a fan favourite Doctor. That's not easy to write. You make sure you get the dynamic right. So this is a fun-packed episode. It's a classic Russell when everything's exploding, and while maybe the Toymaker was defeated a little bit too easy, you can also look at it that he lost from a game, and that is what the Toymaker does. He plays games, he creates these games, so he lost by his own way of how he was created and what he stands for. So number 4, Series 2 finale, Army of Ghosts and Doomsday. I think this is the real peak part here of seeing Russell's emotional side to writing. He loves to build up a character. He loves really getting juicy with a character, and we learn a lot about them, you know, with Rose loving the Doctor and really getting in between them and feeling so sorry for her when she does get stuck in the parallel universe. And even though we know this is revisited down the line, for now everyone's like, is this it? Russell won't hit back. He will not sit down and not giving us a happy ending. Not everything is going to end in a happy way, because that's not realistic. Okay, he kind of does reverse it at the end of Series 4, which we'll get into soon, but still, for what we had for a couple of years between Series 2 and Series 4, you know, that was great. I loved the thing with Torchwood coming alight. He dropped Torchwood in really well across Series 2 for us to think about what that was, with that starting in Tooth and Claw. Cybermen versus the Daleks, he did something different there between those two, creating them to be against each other. That was fantastic. So yeah, really, really good, solid 2-parter. Tennant was great as well. Number 3, Utopia, The Sound of Drums and Last of the Time Lords. I do count this as a 3-parter, some people count it as 2. I don't care, it's a 3-parter for me, because literally Utopia goes straight into the next one, because the Master's just regenerated. And the way that Russell brings about the Master, you know, this is due to the writing, but also due to Derek Jacobi's performance, that sort of light-hearted, comforting, you feel safe around him sort of style of an old man. And then like that, it switches, it turns into a vile, villainous, arrogant Master. Villain. And the way that Russell changes the tone, and this is due to the music as well, and you know, the facial expressions, and you're channeling those driving me insane. Russell really makes it clear to the audience that this isn't the person we knew a minute ago. This is a very, very different man, and as a writer you have to make sure that you use as much strong language as possible to get it across to your audience that this is not the man that you knew. He is now a villain. He does that fantastically. Classic Russell style yet again. I say with all the finales, everything's exploding, you know, the Master is the Prime Minister, he tries to take over the world, everyone's going to die. Just the overall feel that everything's ending. Really good directing, but also great script writing as well to be able to create that sort of feeling. So yeah, really good stuff, again, in the Series 3 finale. Number 2, another finale, Turn Left, Stolen Earth and Journey's End. Yet again, it's a 3-parter. This was like basically the other 2 finales I've spoken about, but on a completely new level, because this was Russell's exit as a showrunner. Well, we all thought it was, but for a time, from Doctor Who, and I think it's great. One thing that any writer has to deal with when writing a series, and that can be a bit of an issue, and Chris Chibnall fell on this, was obviously having a lot of characters in one room at a time. And I'm not saying Russell did this perfectly and everybody represented in a fantastic, the most, you know, balanced and neutral way possible, but I feel like he handled it pretty well for the short amount of time that we got. You know, you had, oh my goodness, you know, Jack, you had Sarah Jane, Martha, Jackie, Rose, Donna. Maybe even the Doctor felt a little bit undercooked because Russell was focusing so much on trying to incorporate everyone. He's actually forgetting the main character. The Doctor's still got moments, but he had their moments like a companion did, so he didn't feel like the Doctor as such. But that's maybe me just nitpicking. Just the build-up. He is so good at building things up and making things go bad. Like, oh, we're in trouble now. But to bring everybody back, it was great from him. Everyone has some classic one-liners. Everyone has something to do as well. He makes everyone important to the story some way. Yeah, really like the story. But it's not number one. And number one, the best episode from Doctor Who, written by Russell T Davies, is Midnight. Yeah. This episode is basically the complete opposite to most on this list, where there are big things happening, everything's exploding, there are numerous amount of villains. In this, it's in one room, you never actually meet the villain. The villain isn't, like, bad. The villain's not trying to kill people, we don't know, it's the mystery. And the fact that Russell can create, arguably one of the best episodes, but for my list, the best episode from Azira, from all in one room, and just for the power of speech. The script here was the most important thing, and this is why it's number one. Even if it's not the best Russell T Davies episode from that era, it's the best one written by him for this. The characters that are picked are great. Everything that is said by them makes sense. You know, he's so good at introducing a character and making you feel comfortable with them and feel like you know them quite quickly. And here, when you've only got one room and you have to talk with each other, you're forced to learn more about them. So you're being, we are being fed character development because there's no other choice, which is great. There's no other distractions, not only for them but for us as an audience. And then Russell knows that he gives big speeches to the 10th Doctor, David Tennant. He is the man that will get out of the situation for the power of his mouth, for the power of words. And then when you take that away from him, that's his biggest weakness, and that's the biggest danger from this episode, all through speaking. So for me, that is the strongest script that Russell T Davies has ever written for Doctor Who. And it's also a fantastic episode, which is really, really thrilling, really edgy as seat, very scary, and a really good payoff. And the hostess, what was her name? I don't know. For some reason, that line just hits me a little bit. She plays such an important part in, the ending. She's the one that made the decision to jump out of the carriage with Miss Silvestri, and no one knew her name. The hero of the hour, and no one knew her name. Some other clever little things, including, intercom tells them that they're being picked up, prepare for boarding. They say that twice. And then Madonna says, obviously, molto bene twice as well. After Tennant repeats, I think that's quite ironic and works really, really well. So yeah, Russell, you've done very, very well. You're a very, very good writer, and if you've watched this, I guess, I like it, you're good. I know you won't watch it. But there we go, guys, that's the end of the video. What do you think? Do you agree, do you disagree? Have I missed any out? I think that's the main ones, but there very much could be a few others. I imagine Love and Monsters will be quite an interesting topic. If only, please do subscribe and give this video a like, and I'll see you all very, very soon. Goodbye.